The Chapter 5 Season 2 FNCS Grand Finals have just concluded, crowning 6 different duos the champions of their region. But what exactly are the strategies these teams used in order to claim the Yaks of Champions? Starting off with EU, we have Swizzy and Vaniac, who won by over 250 points. This season they have been dropping at Brawler's Battleground, all the way on the southwest side of the map, and something that's very interesting about this duo is the fact that despite winning 3 FNCSs and Vaniac being a phenomenal player for years now, most people aren't really familiar with them, even though I can see them easily winning the global championship at the end of this year. The upside to landing at Brawlers is the fact that you can get the Mythic Assault Rifle, which is extremely powerful in the hands of Swizzy to help with Surge. Now this is a boss POI with one of the 4 medallions, so you'd think this is the main reason for them going there, but if you haven't been following Comp 2 closely, you might be surprised to hear they actually always drop the Ares medallion, and there's 2 reasons for this. First one is the fact that when carrying it, your rough location is marked on the map for all to see, and since you're already edge map, teams can easily hold you. The other reason is the fact that the Ares medallion is not very good, only giving you a tiny damage multiplier, which really only gives you 1 to 2 damage more than usual. So the benefits just don't outweigh the risks. Another key point of their gameplay, which many other teams started doing, was using the wings. This makes it so they have much easier rotations during the mid and end game, which we'll see a lot more of later on. Surge wise, they have a perfect strategy for every zone, knowing the best spots to base up and look for damage. On top of this, both of their aim is crazy, and it seems like they rarely ever miss a shot. Now on day 2, they actually would end up being contested, which you would think is a bad thing. However, they wiped them every single time, meaning it was just free points in Surge for them. But now let's get to the most important part, the end game. Pretty much every single time, they play mid and low ground for the first part of it, doing an extraordinarily good job at staying together at all times. Then typically around the last 2 moving zones, they'll look up for height. First they'll assess it to see if it looks like the team is shambles or not. If so, they'll simply go to the front side, spread them out, and take it. Or they'll do another play by tanking zone, then using the wings to send themselves straight up and land right behind them, catching the height team off guard, which results in them either killing the duo or doing enough damage for them just to take it. From here, they keep constant pressure on the other duos underneath them, and then it's a pretty simple win. And even when they end up as solos going into endgame, they still somehow manage to pull off really good games, which we saw multiple times from both of them during this tournament. Now that we went over the Mickey region, we need to talk about the best one with the smartest players, OCE. Obviously I'm joking, but there's still things you can learn from them. OCE's winners are Tinka and Daneth, both with their first FNCS win. They land at the Yamzo Rise split here on the map, which means they pretty much own this forecast tower, which only has a 21% spawn rate, but when you do get it, it obviously helps a lot. One thing that really stands out from them is the fact that they always end up building separate Surge bases instead of one like most other teams. Another thing that they do, which I haven't really seen a single other team in Grands do, is carry 3 guns. No matter what, every single game, Daneth is always carrying a shotgun, a DMR, then a burst SMG or an AR. They do this so later on in the game, when they don't need those DMRs anymore, at least one of them has a good spray gun in order to get kills or just help with fighting. They also choose to not carry wings since they are already more center map, and since they have the fizz, it's really all they need. Now when looking at their end games, they don't actually do anything too crazy. Most of the time, they don't even try to play height and instead opt to play mid and low ground. That being said though, they are really good at getting refreshes together and having efficient rotates. Also, their overall fighting is especially good, and the fact that they had the most eliminations out of anybody on the region, it definitely showed. But funny enough, this right here was actually the reason they ended up winning in the first place.
No way! Bro, I choked!
No.
So if Oatly didn't whiff there, Alex and Worthy, who were only 2 points behind, would have actually won. Next, let's head over to the region who just had a 30-year-old dad qualify to his 9th Grand Finals, Asia, with their winners Job and Michael. Despite being one of the smaller regions, you shouldn't sleep on them, and looking at their games, they really impressed me with how well they played. This is a duo who doesn't do anything too flashy. They have a game plan and they stick to it. Their drop of choice is Pleasant Piazza and is very good this season since there's a bunker spawn right there. And if that one doesn't spawn, they are able to claim the one near Grim Gate. The most interesting thing I noted right away was their choice of weapons. For the most part, in any other game, you'll see a duo carry 1 DMR, a different spray gun, or the waterbending mythic, but they opt to go for double waterbending instead.
This team also really likes to play in zone, whether it's because they're going for a bunker spawn or for a really good dead side rotate. And a big reason for them even being able to do this in the first place is because of the water bending, since they are able to get a bunch of surge damage beforehand, so they don't need to worry about it later on. During the moving zones though is where I was really impressed because they just play so simple. They quite literally never look up for height and seem to be the low ground kings of Asia. The first few moving zones, they do an excellent job at staying dead side and conserving mats. Then when they see an opening, claim low ground. But the thing that stands out the most is how in sync they are. No matter what, during the entire endgame, they are always playing hip to hip. This makes getting kills so much easier, and it's really hard for one of them to get singled out and die. So this is a team I would definitely keep my eye on when it comes to the global championship at the end of this year. Asia was short and sweet, but now let's go over to Brazil, where the original winners actually got banned. Yep, you heard that right, the original team who won would end up getting taken off of the leaderboard and banned because they were teaming. So because of that, the new winners were now Persia and Ed, getting their first FNCS win. Just like OCE, they drop at the Yamzo Rise split, claiming the forecast tower. Unlike them though, they use wings whenever possible, also having one of them carry water bending when they can. Another thing I noticed, which most teams don't do, is that a lot of the time they carry flow berries even when they have fizz. Now when I took a look at their end games, I'm gonna be completely honest here, I'm surprised they won. Most of the time they end up taking height before the moving zones begin, but every single time they did, at some point they'd run out of mats and lose it, then eventually die shortly after. And I'm not trying to bash them, but this match history is all over the place, and on day 1 they actually finished in 14th. Now what really works for them is that they are both phenomenal fighters. Looking at the overall picture, I just didn't see much of a foolproof game plan. They knew what they wanted to do, however the execution of it wasn't always the best. But they did win, so who am I to say what they could have done better? Before we get to NA, we have to talk about Middle East and the winners FKS and Adapter. They drop at the split between Grand Glacier and Reckless Railway. The big upside of this area is that they have a forecast tower right there with a 56% spawn rate, and on top of that there's a bunker right next to it which also has the chance of spawning. Another major upside to this POI is the fact that there are so many fishing spots. But this was also kind of a nerf because right before Grands, EMPs and the Chain of Hades were vaulted, meaning it took a lot longer to actually fish. However, they still did it anyways and went until both of them had at least 3 shieldfish. From here, they go around being super aggressive trying to get surged because they have a bunch of extra heals stored up for if they get tagged. They also follow the weapon strategies of most other teams, having one DMR and the other using waterbending to make sure they stay up on Storm Surge. Looking at their endgames, they honestly don't do anything too notable, and sometimes it seems a bit all over the place. Most of the time, they really just love to brute force their way through a bunch of teams in order to claim whatever layer they're on. But this playstyle ends up working pretty well for them since they are very good at playing right on top of each other. With that being said though, they only really do it for the first few moving zones, and when it gets to the final moving zone, it seems like they kind of panic and go different ways, resulting in at least one of them dying. Other than that though, they play very smart and methodical, which is why they won in the end. Last but certainly not least, we have Peterbot and Poyo on NA having the best season we've ever seen and breaking the FNCS Grand Finals point record by getting almost 1100 points. Interestingly enough, we actually saw a very different team in the Grands versus the Duo Cash Cups. Before they were much more aggressive, pushing teams pretty much whenever they wanted, but this time they played a lot more passive and smart. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you'll know they completely claimed Grim Gate this season, and surprisingly was the only team out of any region to win from here. Having the Cerberus medallion means they can save out on a ton of mats throughout the entire game, and having this entire area uncontested means they can make sure they have the best loot possible from Grim. And if it couldn't get any better, most of the time they're able to claim this bunker, which gives them the best attachments possible on their weapons, which results in them rarely ever being below Surge. And funny enough, even though they won by so much, they kind of underperformed. There were a bunch of games where one of them went down early on and the other had the solo clutch. However, when they were both up, they won pretty much every single game. And since they have the coin, every single time they're guaranteed to have the most amount of mats in the entire lobby. From here, they try to get damage or chop out height, then simply fizz dash above them. Once the opposing team realizes they have the coin, they typically instantly drop down since it's almost impossible to keep. And this is also because of the conditioning they've been doing this entire season for every single lobby. And well, if a team does end up trying to fight them, they get wiped pretty quickly. After this, Peter and Pollo have a very easy game, just needing to maintain pressure and eventually just win. That's how every region won FNCS, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out these videos here. Have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.